for joining us. Representative Porter, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Mr. Macchiarola, this isn't your first rodeo. You've come to testify before in Congress, and you've worked on these issues for a long time. Before you were working for the American Petroleum Institute, you were staff director for the Senate Committee on Energy and Natural Resources. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that committee has jurisdiction over the issues that you now lobby on. And you get paid a much better salary in the private sector than in the government, which is very typical. And your companies, they're part of capitalism. They invest, they take risk, they earn money, they share that money with shareholders. But my question is, why should the taxpayers have to pay for any of that? Why should taxpayers have to shell out for your salary and for the costs of pollution? Why shouldn't the companies bear that themselves? Let's assume, just for a minute, that big oil companies are bad actors in a capitalist system. Even if I'm okay with that, why do I have to pay? Why do taxpayers have to subsidize you and your polluting clients?
Thanks for your question, Congresswoman. So taxpayers paid my salary when I worked for the government from 2004 through 2013. Since then, after leaving public service, I've worked in the private sector in a range of different roles, and taxpayers have not funded my salary.
We're claiming my time,
since
Mr. Macchiarola.
Since that time. Thank you.
But you are aware that the fossil fuel industry receives $30 billion in federal subsidies in 2020, last year. You don't think they use any of that federal money to pay your salary to come lobby us, to keep the rules in their favor so that you can come back to lobby us? Why do I have to pay for you to shill for oil companies? Why do we as taxpayers have to pay subsidies to the oil and gas industry?
Thank you for your question, Congresswoman. So the federal leasing of oil and gas development produces a significant amount of funding for the Treasury. In fact,
we're claiming my time.
Mr.
Macchiarola,
I'd like to
Mr. Macchiarola, excuse me, but the evidence is clear. We taxpayers subsidize the oil and gas industry. We did it this year alone in the middle of the world's greatest pandemic, $15.2 billion in direct pandemic relief alone to fossil fuel companies. And the fossil fuel industry turned around in 2020 and spent $139 million on political donations and $111 million lobbying. Look, I get it. You drill in the Arctic refuge, you take out oil and gas, and you poison the planet. Bad enough. But why should taxpayers have to subsidize that activity? It's a bridge too far, Mr. Macchiarola, not with my tax dollars. You want to pollute, you want to hurt the wildlife, you want to destroy our planet, do it on your company's own dime. The subsidies here have to stop.
Thanks for your question.
Ms. Thunberg, I want to turn, that's not a question, Mr. Macchiarola, that's a fact. Ms. Thunberg, I want to turn to you.
I'd like to respond to the question about stabilization, because it's a very important point that you made, Congresswoman. During the period of time where the economy was shedding 20 million jobs, and both Congress and the administration, through fiscal policy and monetary policy, came in and stabilized the economy through bipartisan efforts.
Reclaiming my time, Mr. Macchiarola, there's nothing magical about bipartisan. The vast majority of your political contributions are to Republicans. And during that period from March to August, when you were receiving, the oil companies were receiving $15.2 billion in direct relief, you laid off 107,000 workers from that March to August. Now I want to talk to Ms.
You referenced my congressional experience. I actually have found that there is something magical about bipartisan. It's something that this Congress
reclaiming my time,
could actually take a lesson from bipartisanship. and to be able to move forward on some of these important issues, Congressman. Thank you for your question.
Ms. Thunberg, I just wanted to ask you one question. I have a 9-year-old daughter. I have 3 kids. And I told my 9-year-old daughter that I was going to be speaking with you. And I said, what do you think about the climate change? And she said, the earth is on fire and we're all going to die soon. And I asked her how that made her feel. And she said it made her feel angry. What should I tell my daughter? And how should I help her and the youngest generation bear the emotional toll of the actions that we're taking, fossil fuel companies are taking to destroy our planet?
Well, thank you for a question. That's a big question. And I know that there are many young people who feel angry and sad because of all the things that some people are doing to this planet and to our futures and to the most affected people already today. And that's very understandable. It would be strange if we didn't feel that way, because then we wouldn't have any empathy. But of course, there is still much hope. And if we choose to take action, then we can do this. And there's unlimited things that we can do. And if we choose to act together, there are no limits to what we can accomplish. And always the best medication against anger and anxiety is to take action yourself. So that's what I would tell her, to take action herself, because that will make her feel so much better. That's what it did to me, at least, and so many others.
Thank you so much. Mr. Chair, I yield back.